Welcome, everybody, to the coach. We have got none other than the Joe Stan with us today. Woo! Joe, thank you for coming on. Man, it's
Yes,
going.
ma'am. I appreciate you having me.
Oh, this is awesome. So, guys, some of you have heard his testimony, parts of his testimony, but we're going to hear it today because we're going to slay that opponent in life of identity crisis. And we've all been in one before, whether we probably realize it or not, but there's been periods of times in our life where identity crisis can be a thing. So, Joe's going to tell us about that today through his testimony. Joe, take it away.
Hey, hope everybody's doing well. Um, I guess you want me to start with my story, I suppose.
Yes.
All right. Well, I mean, I was born in Clayton, North Carolina. It was a small town back then. It's kind of getting larger by the second, and I'm not happy about it. But I grew up I grew up on a farm. It was more of a ranch. We did livestock, cows, horses, pigs, chickens, all that stuff. It was a lot of work, but in terms of identity crisis, is man's in a fallen state. I mean, our whole world is. So, I'm born and I start living in comparison, and
Oh,
I'm
that's
searching
nice.
for myself, and I think we might come back to this, but I think one of the most important questions that people have to ask is, who am I? And try to figure out that answer. But the most important question that we can ask is found in Acts chapter 9, verse 5. Paul's on the way to Damascus, and he's encountered by the resurrected, living Christ on his way, and Christ strikes him blind. Paul falls down to his knees. He saw at that time, saying he gets a new name. But the question he asks is, "Who art thou, Lord?" And
Mm.
that's the most important question that we're going to come to terms with in our life, and everybody's got to answer it. Who is Jesus Christ? When I find the answer to that question, then the question of who am I becomes a lot more apparent, because my identity is in Christ. I spent my whole life trying to find it in the world, trying to live up to the lies of the enemy and what the world told me about myself. And the more I tried to live up to that, the further I got away from who I truly am, and the further I got away from my Creator.
Mm.
And it's funny because the closer I get to God, the closer I get to who I actually am and who I was created to be. So, um,
Yes.
early life was, I kind of had this weird dynamic. I had a father that was, he was a strict disciplinarian. He pretty much told us that me and my brother were, we were born so that we could do labor on the farm. There was moments that he told me he didn't want me. I never heard "I love you" or "I'm proud of you," and I'm not saying that to make him look bad. That's just the way it was. And the more Christ has done work in my life, he's also done work in my father's life. We have a good relationship now. It's not like it was back then, but I'd always seek validation in my father because, as a child, my closest reference to who God is, my heavenly Father, is what I see from my earthly father. And then
Amen.
I start placing these human characteristics on a flawless and perfect God, and that you can't put God into a human box. Um, People are going to make mistakes, are going to fall short, and I think the whole case, whether it be addiction or depression or identity crisis in general, it stems from traumatic experiences that we go through in early childhood normally, or even in late childhood, if you or in, late adulthood, when if you go through a divorce, or you get cheated on by a spouse, or find yourself in situations. But usually when people hear the word trauma, they think you know rape, sexual assault, child abuse, things like that. But it doesn't have to be something that that large to be traumatic. Um, I'll give you a quick example. Like, let's say my dad's cutting the grass, and I go up to him and I'm like, "Dad, throw the ball with me," and he's like, "Yeah, I'm too busy. I don't have time for that." He's not wrong in what he communicates to me. Like, he's doing something to make the house look better. He's working. He's trying to provide whatever it may be. But as a child, what I hear is, "I don't have time for you. You're not worth anything to me." And there's two parts to communication. One is what I say and what I mean by what I say, and the second part is what you hear
Hmm.
and how you interpret what I hear. And those two things may be way off. And it's nobody's fault, but something that small can lead a child to not want to come to a parent for help. Like if I'm crying and my mom's like, "Good little boys don't cry," what I'm going to hear is, "Crying little boys aren't loved," and then like I'll start to bottle things up. And especially from a man's perspective, like that whole wipe some dirt on it, walk it off, all that stuff starts to kind of come to the surface, and now I'm just a void vessel of a human being that feels like I can't show emotion, can't shed a tear. And we keep telling these people that men don't cry, but the man, the greatest man that ever lived, John 11:35, Jesus wept. So if Christ can be compelled to be moved to tears, why can't we? Like, why am
Amen.
I'm not more man than Jesus is. So
That's a good
we
word.
had that, yeah. So I had that kind of dynamic going on where my dad didn't really want me, and my mother overcompensated and probably loved me too much. So it was like I was the biggest baller on the block in her eyes, and I was nothing in my father's eyes. So my life was in extremes, like, and I couldn't find that grace point in the middle to kind of exist where I should be. We're somewhere between angels and insects, and
Mm.
I was either an angel or a dung beetle
Mm.
most of my life. But first suicide attempt, I was 6 years old, and it all goes back to that, where do I fit in? Like, I was born with this. I don't know if I was born with it, but at an early age, I got this idea of like, I don't belong. Nobody wants me. I don't fit in anywhere. Um, Chronic uniqueness. That idea that nobody gets it, nobody understands. And I find a lot of addicts struggle with that mentality, and it's such a toxic mentality to think that somebody doesn't understand, because just because they don't medicate their ailment the way that I did doesn't mean that they don't feel the things I feel. I remember I've been to treatment 11 times in addiction, and I'd sit down with a therapist, and my first question is, "Are you like me? Are you an addict?" And as soon as they would say no, I'm like, "You can't help me then." And it's like, why can't they help me? Like, they know how to get through life and the circumstances of it without diving headfirst into a bottle of liquor, or without injecting themselves with some toxic substance that's going to ruin the rest of their life. It's
Right.
I can learn something from them, but they know how to handle life on life's terms. I don't. So I was just struggling with that part, and just feeling inadequate, because I was trying to be filled from a source that can't fill me. The world can't fill me. I've got to plug into a source that can, and when I plug into Jesus, I stay pretty full. Um, See, I kind of skipped through grade school and high school and all that stuff, and yeah, I get to college, and I go on a sports I got an athletic scholarship, and that's about the time that I got introduced to drugs and alcohol. I had a relatively late start compared to some of the people that I come across. I've met people that was drinking 10 years old, 12 years old. They were, promiscuous and all that kind of stuff at an early age. That wasn't the way I was brought up. I was in such a structured, disciplined upbringing that, I didn't really go out. I didn't really have a large group of friends, and that kind of that kind of contributed to, that feeling that I don't belong anywhere. Nobody wants me. Nobody loves me. All that crybaby stuff that I struggle with in my head all the time. Yeah, and I realize now it's just, it's a stronghold that I helped the enemy build within me. Yeah, definition of a stronghold is it's a fortress whose entrance is very inaccessible. Like it's hard to penetrate. It's hard to get in. So I was building up these walls around myself and putting myself in a box where, it's like, nobody understands things. And I mean, the truth of the matter is, I could probably go out to Walmart and pick up a rock and throw it, and chances are I'm going to hit somebody that understands, because we all are going through something. Like, we've all been through things. We all know what depression feels like, what loneliness feels like, what it's like to have a broken heart. Like, everybody gets that, but I medicate it with the things that I'm getting ready to be introduced to. So, I start smoking marijuana in college, and it's not a progressive thing for me. It's like, as soon as I smoke marijuana, I become immediately a full blown pothead. I
Mm.
quit playing sports. I decided I'm gonna sell drugs, and that was it, man. You make it through college. I did pretty well as far as academics goes, but I quit playing sports. Get out of college, and I got to get a job, so I had to quit smoking weed, and I started picking up a bottle. And I think there's a reason why they call alcohol spirits. I think it opens up a gateway where legitimate spirits can infiltrate you and get a hold of you, and especially the way that I did it. I put all my reliance in these substances, and it's like, here in 12-step rooms, a lot of times they say, we got an addiction, or what is that, allergy to alcohol, and that's not the case for me. I'm not allergic to alcohol. I'm allergic to myself. I'm allergic to the skin I am. Like it gives. I have an adverse reaction to the skin that I'm wrapped in, and I'm just looking for a way out of it. And I wouldn't have done drugs and alcohol if they didn't work. They got me out of myself. They made me not feel the way that I felt. When I feel bad, I want to feel good. When I feel good, I want to feel better, and I want it right now. So, like, when I would say I was an addict, what I mean is that I will do anything to change the way I feel about myself and my circumstances in the moment I'm in, and I will use anything, and that includes people, that includes drugs, alcohol, violence, manipulation, lies, like whatever I got to do to feel better than I do in that moment. And I will worry about the consequences of that if and when tomorrow comes. So, like, when they tell you that one day at a time thing, everybody that goes in to a treatment center should understand that, because, when you live the lifestyle of an alcoholic or addict, is always on that next one. Like, what am I going to do to get that, what I need right now? It's always in the moment. It's always in that day. And, it's always that one more. And, the way I did it, it's like, if you stood in between me and one more, you didn't have any place in my life. And that's not just people. It's like honesty. Honesty had no place in my life because it stood between me and one more. Reliability, dependability, like all of that stuff. Being a father, like whatever it was, I didn't, I couldn't attach to it because it stood in the way of me getting one more. So, I start to drinking a lot, and at that point in time, I quit playing sports, and I had got a lot into, like, mixed martial arts and powerlifting. So, I got this job and I was spending 50 hours a week at work. I was 30 hours a week at the gym. And I mean, I was a machine. I was, I was about 300 pounds. I'm a big guy. Like I'm 6'5", 270 right now, but I was about 300 pounds in and just like jacked. And also had MMA training. I would not want to cross paths today with me back then. Like I was not not somebody that you want to get in a scrap with back then. But I go to these bars and my ego's so big. I'm self-centered, selfish, self-seeking, self-serving, all those things. And somebody would be looking at the girl behind me, and I'm like, "What are you looking at? Like, why are you looking at me? Because it's all about me. You can't tell me nothing. I know more than you do. I'm smarter than you are, and I'm right. So that's just that was my attitude back then. So I put hands on people, and yeah, a lot of arrests. I've been homeless a number of times. I've been shot at, been stabbed, been slashed, been cut. Yeah, had a lot of experiences in life, but uh, so yeah, I'm doing all this stuff, and my body's hurting all the time. And this guy that I used to train with, he came up with this little blue pill, and he's like, "You take this, you feel better." It was a 80 milligram oxycontin. So we go back to my house, and I'm like, how do you do this? And he crushed it up and like chopped it into 3 lines, and I snorted 2 of those lines. First time I ever did oxycontin, and I snorted it. That's the way I am. Like it's I'm all in on everything. So I do that, and it's like I never not want to feel this way again. So
Mm-hmm.
like I'm facing that feeling with everything I have. Spending my whole paycheck trying to get more, and I can't go to work some days because I'm so dope sick, or I got to meet the plug before I go in. All this stuff's going on. It's just an insane lifestyle thinking about it, but um, and it's odd, man, because you cross this line in it. 'Cause, I'd gotten so far in separation from God and so far away from who I truly am. I'm not a violent person by nature, but when I'm living on that animalistic level, I change. Like I'm somebody completely different. And then I got the world pumping up these lies, like Joe's this, that, and the other. He's what I got. I had a reputation around here, and did you see what happened last week? And all that stuff was going on. So I just figured in my head like this is elevating me in the eyes of other people. Like the more violent I can be, the more of a badass or whatever I could be. The more acceptance I'll have. And it led me to being arrested a lot and all kinds of stuff. But when I started the OxyContin, um, I lost that job. I'll say I lost it. I traded it in to continue my lifestyle because I just wasn't a good employee. I wasn't dependable, reliable, and I didn't deserve to have the job I had. So I lose that job. When I lost that job, I had a friend of mine came to me and he said, I got a way you can make money. Like my truck was getting repossessed, motorcycle getting repossessed, my house went into foreclosure, and I get in the car with him and he takes me to this warehouse, and there's a lot of people there that are well connected in criminal enterprises. So, and what's going on in this place is the equivalence of like human cockfighting or human dog fighting. They're basically placing bets on people, and we would go in and fight each other. And I did well, if you can call it that, at that game. And not long after I started doing that, I was brought in to do security at first, and then that turned into enforcer work and then collections. And I was never affiliated with a gang, but I did a lot of contract work for people, and they would end up sending me and some other guys basically to go deal with people that they didn't or couldn't deal with. And so, it was like, I mean, there was bad things going on. I mean, there's a lot of things that I never thought I would be a part of, let alone see. And, like my life is looking like some crazy gangster movie. And, I'm like, what did I do here? How did I get myself into this? And, part of that, I was going through the Midwest and like, Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, Minnesota, like, all places throughout our Midwest of our country. And, the people that I was sent to go after were involved in like human trafficking and things like that. Like I've been in places looking for a target and have found children like chained up in basements, basically with like 5-gallon buckets to use the bathroom in, and malnourished. Been into Mexico and places like Juarez, La Paz, Chihuahua. It's basically on the outskirts of these towns because there's a misconception, like with cartels, like people think that cartels run the police, but cartels are the police. Um, and within the towns that they control, I mean, it's peaceful, it's quiet. Like if you get out of line, they deal with you. But on the outskirts of these towns, there's a lot more, you know, bad things happening. You just want experience, just to, I guess, just to kind of say, the type of stuff that I would encounter is I was going after a guy down there, and we breached the house, and I make it upstairs, and I catch it in the act of it happening. Like, whether they got what I would compare it to is like the metal box spring with the mattress stripped off of it, the cloth and fabric stripped off of it, and it's bolted to the wall. And they got this 12-year-old girl chained up to it, and they've got like cables hooked up to it so they could electrocute her. And they get these kids addicted to heroin, and they're basically like zombies. And I walked in, and this guy was sexually assaulting this girl. And just I guess I didn't suffer abuse anywhere near that, but I did go through some things when I was a child.
Mhm.
And like I've got a heart for kids, and what, just seeing that kind of thing, it brought something out of me that I didn't realize was in there. That happened more than once, but the one I'm talking about, like I got the girl out, got her into Louisiana, and she gave me her parents' phone number, so I was able to call them and put her on a bus and give them the information so they could pick her up at the bus stop. And just after that happened, I'm just sitting there like, man, how do you heal from that?
Yeah.
Like, what's her identity going to be after that? I still think about that. Like, how do you overcome that? And like I know today that Christ can Christ can make anything horrible into something great. Yeah, I've seen him do it with myself. He did it on the cross. Like he's got a way of taking something bad and turn it into something that heals and helps people. But and on another point of that, just I didn't have any consideration at the time for the people that were doing these things to her.
Yeah.
But in my experience since then, I work with a lot of people that go through some things and do things as well. And I've never met somebody that is one of those types of people, a pedophile or rapist or any of that stuff, that didn't experience those things in their childhood. We'll say 99 for just to make sure, so that, 99% of these people that do these things were victims of these things. And I'm not saying I have compassion for them, but there's an understanding of,
Yes.
like, that's learned behavior. Like,
It is.
you don't, you're not born a rapist. You're not born a child molester. You become that. And I think that's how deep that issue runs in the world. In America. I mean, I've come across list of names of people that a lot of folks voted for in office in these places. When that Pizzagate thing came out, I didn't even have to hear nothing about it. I was like, that's true. Like that's real. Like that's happening. I did that for a number of about 2 years, and then I was seeing this girl, and she tells me she's pregnant. So, I got a son that's coming, and like that's the first time I think I got something to lose now. Like I loved my son before he was born, and I wanted to be a good father. I wanted to give him a better life. I loved him before he was born. I wanted to make sure he knew that. I was proud of him, and I wanted to give him the things that I felt like I didn't get as a child. And as I go to the people that I work for, and I'm just like, man, I ain't doing this no more. And I was fortunate to be let out of that lifestyle without repercussion. Um, I don't know if it was for the fact that they trusted me enough, or if it was they didn't want the problem that I came with. But I was able to walk away from that, and I walked away well off. I had made a lot of money in that lifestyle, but within a matter of about 4 months, all of it was gone. I'd done so many things in that lifestyle that brought so much more shame up to me and made me question who I was. And am I this guy? Am I this person that just hurts people and harms people, and just leaves scorched earth wherever I go? So like with the addiction part, um, it's I'm so far away from God, and I find something that works, something that gets me out of feeling shame and discomfort in being who I am. So I start using these substances, and eventually I get to this line where the things that I'm using to get out of my shame are now bringing me shame. And the only thing that I know to get out of that is to do more. And I guess that's the vicious cycle or the hamster wheel that people talk about. But it's like my medicine is now keeping me sick,
Mm.
and the only solution I have is more. So, I blew through all that money, and my son's it's probably about 4 months before he's born, but I was in this trap house, and I'm watching these little kids play with plastic guns. They got the little orange tip on the end of them,
Mhm.
and I end up passing out in this dirty pile of laundry because I was living a luxurious life at the time. I get woke up with one of these kids is kicking me in my foot, and I open my eyes. I look past the tip of the gun, and I look in the kid's eyes, and one of them's 8, one of them's about 10, but I looked in one of them's eyes, and like all the innocence is gone. Like their eyes are just jet black, and I remember thinking that's going to be my son if I don't get my life together. But I couldn't. It was like I was sitting on this fence, and on one side of the fence is I don't want to use anymore, and on the other side of the fence is I can't stop using. And I'm just sitting there and I sat there for so many years. And so my son gets born. He's about 4 years old. And I tried to be a good dad and all that stuff. And I had when I had him with me, Um, yeah, I'm just going to be 100% transparent because, it might, somebody might hear it that can relate. But I put him in his playpen, and I couldn't even be a father without being high. I couldn't, as much as I loved him, love wasn't enough for me to put down what I was doing and be a good dad. But I'd put him in his playpen and get high and nod off. And, I've taken him, as a small child to pick up drugs and stuff like that. Just I'm not stuff I wish I could do over. I really wish I would have done different in my life. And you know, thank God he didn't get hurt or nothing bad happened. My mom played a big part in that. I lived across the farm from them at the time, and she would come to my house, and I'd be nodded out on the couch, and she'd just take him home with her. Just stuff I wish I could do over. And when he was about 4 years old, well, prior to this, this is like when he was first born, but I'd finally come to my family and been like, yeah, I got a problem, and I can't stop by myself. I need help. And they didn't know what to do. They had been praying, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know anything about recovery or how to be a sober man, or just how to be sober in general. And my son's mom was sitting in on this meeting, and she filed an ex parte order and took custody, so I could only see my son for supervised visits for a brief amount of time, once a week. And then when he was 4, he starts playing flag football, and they let me be one of the coaches on his football team, which was a terrible, a terrible decision. And I remember one night, the suicide thing has always been a part of my story. Like I've tried a lot of times, and I could never get it right. And one of them nights is I get in that mindset where I'm starting to listen to this, like, who am I? And the voice is telling me that you're worthless. Your son will be better off without you. In fact, the world would be a better place without you in it. So I tried to overdose intentionally, and this is kind of where God starts stepping in the story. I had this picture of my son on the wall right next to my bedroom door, and every time I walked in the bedroom, like, I could see his face. And I come in. I never moved that picture off the wall. Like, I never took it down, never moved it. It got to the point where I could hardly look at it because of the shame that I had. So I sit down on the bed and inject a substantial amount of heroin. My plan was to go to sleep and not wake up. And this dog I had at the time, he jumped on the bed and he just kept licking my face and waking me up. And I kind of rolled over and looked, and that picture of my son had been moved off the wall onto my nightstand, and like my eyes locked in on his eyes. And there was still innocence there. There was still a light there. And I thought back to that kid at that trap house. I don't remember calling 911, but they said I did. And one of the police officers that showed up at my house he was probably the only police officer that still treated me like a human on the Clayton Police Department. And they come in, Narcan me, and send me to the hospital. And within 5 hours, they let me out of the hospital, send me back home. And that's probably not a great way. I get home in precipitated withdrawal. And if anybody don't know what that is when you get Narcan and opioid overdose, you basically feel a full week of withdrawal in a 24-hour period, and it's absolutely miserable. It's painful. you're sick. So I couldn't get out of bed, and he had a game that day, and I didn't go. And he calls me after the game. He's crying like, "Daddy, why didn't you come to my game? Where are you at?" And like all those feelings came back. He'd be better off without me. The world's a better place without you in it. So I went in my bathroom and locked the door and sat down on the toilet lid. And I drawed up every bit of heroin I had left. And I remember how thick it was trying to push it into my vein. And I don't even know if I got it all in there, but I faded out and died right there, sitting on the toilet lid. And that one police officer that had come to my house previous to that, he was off duty that day, and something convicted him or compelled him to drive by my house and check on me. I can't, you know, without divine intervention, I can't explain that. I was mortal enemies with the police, and this guy just comes to see how I'm doing, like a junkie, criminal, drug addict, drug dealer. He just shows up at the perfect time. He sees my truck in the driveway. My front door's unlocked. He comes in the house, calls my name. I don't answer. And he sees the bathroom door shut and locked, and he kicks the door down, and he saved my life that day.
Wow.
So, again, I go to the hospital, but this time they put me on a 5150, which is when you're deemed a threat to yourself or others, and they put you on a 72-hour hold. So I was stuck in the hospital, and the only phone call I got was from my neighbor telling me that the police were outside of my house and raiding my house. So my landlord didn't really care for that too much, and told me I needed to find somewhere else to go. So when I got out of the hospital, I went and put my things in storage, and at this point, like, my parents hadn't talked to me in a while. Um, I talked to my mom about it, after the fact, and she said that she just got tired of mourning her son while he was still alive. Like, she had to bury me in her mind, just to have some type of peace in her life. And she was always happy when I was in jail because she knew I had food, I had shelter, I wasn't on the streets, and I was alive. But I show up at their house, and I'm like, Mom, can I stay here till I get back on my feet? And she says, "Well, I have to talk to your dad." And I knew it was going to be a no then, but she asked me would I ride to the store with her. Like, my mom's a saint. Like, she's one of the best people I know, if not the best person I know. And she's never done anything wrong, but this is the only time she's ever lied to me. And she didn't take me to the store, but she took me to this homeless shelter. And she's like, "Get out of my car before I call the police." So I get out, and I walk in this building. And it's ironic because I go in here and I'm looking at all these homeless people, and I'm like, I'm better than this. Like, I'm not like them, and I'm homeless. Like, I've got nowhere to go. Like, I am one of these people, but I look at them like I'm something different. I'm still unique and something else than what I'm existing in right now. But I end up staying, and I kind of got an introduction to recovery at this place. Uh, they had a 12-step recovery deal attached to the homeless shelter. So, like, all day long, we're in these classes learning about addiction, learning about recovery. And, I learned some things there. But after about 2 months there, I thought I had it all figured out. A buddy of mine said I could rent the trailer next door to him, and he set me up with a job. And things went pretty well for 8 to 10 months, and kind of got in that mindset of, I don't need these meetings. I don't need to pray. I wasn't going to church. I wasn't reading the word. All that stuff. I wasn't seeking Christ, and I started seeking something else. And I had people around me that were overdosing, dying. I had a friend of mine that was in end stage liver failure that I'd met in the rooms of AA. And when I met her, she was about a year and a half sober. And a few months after that, she goes up to pick up her 2 month or 2 year chip, and she can't hardly walk to the podium. Like, she's drunk in an AA meeting, walking up there to pick up a sobriety chip. And it's like all this shame's attached to it. It's like she's in a place designed to help people, yet she's too prideful or too shameful to ask for help. I was reading this thing the other day, and it was saying like the majority of people that choke to death in public, what they'll do is like, they'll be sitting in a restaurant eating, they'll start choking, and immediately they get up, run into the bathroom, and lock themselves in a stall, and they end up choking to death alone. And you got all this help around you, but you run away from it, isolate, and choke to death. And I see that all the times, and whether it be recovery meetings or even church, people come up and you're like, "How you doing?" And they'll say, "I'm fine," and they're choking to death. But there's too much shame, too much pride, too much something that is preventing them to ask for help in a place that is designed to help. And so, she's in a relapse. She had called me to take her to this meeting, and I can smell the vodka on her. Take her to the meeting. She's just in a drunken stupor the whole time, and I take her back home, and I'm like, "How long have you been drinking?" And she's like, "I ain't drinking." It's like I can smell it when like you're drunk right now. And it's all the lies, but I get her home, and I'm looking through her house, and she lived by herself. And I'm looking through her house, and like I'm finding half drank fifths of Sky vodka hidden everywhere, like in one of her 6 million Gucci bags, and folded up in laundry in the dryer in the back of the toilet, just like she's living by herself, and she's hiding all this liquor. And it shows the gravity of what happens when you put your reliance into something demonic, and it really gets its claws in you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things that she really failed on was coming to know God, and coming to terms with who Christ is, and the magnitude of what he did when he was on earth.
Yeah.
She never wrapped her head around it. She would do all this yoga and goat yoga and crystals and all this other witchcraft, and but she never like came to terms with the creator. Like, she would worship the created. So she passed away September 2020. This was coming into the beginning of 2020. So that was going on. I had about 4 friends of mine overdose, and I did what I always do, and I made it about myself. I see this all the time, like on Facebook, with people in the recovery community. It's like their best friends, uncles, cousins, daughters, husband will pass away, and they'll make Facebook posts about how devastated they are. And not saying you shouldn't grieve or mourn the loss of somebody that you know and love, but it's like, I lost this person. Like, people don't belong to me, and like, why am I going to make this moment about myself? Like, why am I going to take away from what actually something bad that actually happened to somebody and make it about myself? But that's what I did. I made it all about myself. And that morning, one morning I woke up, and I called a guy in AA at 5 in the morning. I knew he wasn't going to answer, and I called my dope man, and I knew he would. And I went and picked up a bag of heroin, And I remember like all day long, I'm sitting there like at work with this bag in my pocket, and it's like one voice is saying, "You can do this just once. You don't have to feel the way you feel. You can feel better." And this other voice is like, "You know what happens when you do this once? Like it doesn't stop. Like don't do it." And I was just going back and forth, but that first voice won out. I was actually I got asked to speak at that homeless shelter that I'd gone through, and I showed up there sober, clean. And before I went out and spoke, I went in the bathroom and snorted heroin. And I go out there, and I mean, I crushed it, man. Like I did really well in my my talk. But it's like go home and I finish the bag, and then I'm on the phone like, give me more. It's never one time for me. It's one more time for me. And within 2 weeks of that, I had a drug test popped on me at work. I told them I couldn't pass it, and they turned me loose. So like at that point, I went straight back to what I knew. I was selling drugs and trying to do construction work just to maintain the lifestyle I was living. And on June 12th of 2020, yeah, at this point, I'm like mixing fentanyl and meth, and that's how smart I am. And I went to pick up some methamphetamine, about a 45-minute drive. I'd been up for 7 days, and it's always been a pure product. And I get this bag and I take a shot of it, and I'm like, okay, this will give me some energy. I'll get home. And about 20 minutes into the drive, I realized that what I had gotten had been cut with fentanyl. And I started kind of nodding out behind the wheel. And I remember I was about 5 minutes from home, and I remember like coming to in the ditch, on the slope, being sideways, and I saw that RPC, that concrete drain pipe underneath the driveway in front of me. And dashboard read 60 miles an hour, and then everything goes black. But I can tell you that I felt a warmth there. Like I felt a peace with me. I could see what was happening from above it. Like I saw them put staples in my head. I saw them put me on the ambulance. I heard them tell my parents that I was probably not going to survive. And I remember there just being this bright light. It was like brighter than the sun, but it wasn't painful for my eyes to look at it. Like it was just like, I mean, it was like pure love almost. And then like it seemed just like a moment, but like all these visions of things start running through my head, and then I come to 3 days later in the hospital bed. I'm handcuffed to the hospital bed, and the police were nice enough to tape a DUI ticket to my hospital bed. So kudos to them for that. And the nurse comes in, and I don't remember a whole lot about it. I don't remember this nurse's name, but she comes in and she's like, "Mr. Stanley, you should be in a cemetery right now." She says, 95% of the people that come in with your injuries died, arrest, or quadriplegic. I had broken my neck, fractured my spine. I had a piece of my skull compressed on my cranial nerve. That's why this half of my face doesn't work like it's supposed to. And she goes, "You have a purpose here, and you need to figure out what that is and hold on to it." And like I never forget that, because that was the first time that somebody actually believed in me, and so long I couldn't remember. It was like, I got a purpose here. Like it's not to scorch the earth. She told me that the fact that I could still move my arms and legs and I was still alive had restored her faith. It's like God is using this horrible thing to work wonders in this woman's life, but where I'm still in the mindset of, where's my break, where's my wonders.
Yeah.
And I keep I keep asking for more narcotics. And about 6 days after I woke up, the doctor comes in. He's like, "I'm taking you off the narcotics." He said, "I've got you on more opioid pain medication than I've had any patient under my care in 30 years of practice." He says, "I'm afraid you're going to overdose and die in my hospital, and I'm not going to let that happen." And, I begged him not to take me off because I knew that withdrawal was coming. And, my physical pain was immense. Like I was in physical pain, but the emotional pain was what I was afraid of. Um, I didn't want to have that one thing that I grown to love. It's like one of them toxic relationships I had. I hear these statistics of battered women having to leave the relationship 7 times before they finally get out on average. And that was my relationship with drugs and alcohol, man. It beat the hell out of me. And I kept coming back. Like I just stayed there. This was as good as I was going to do. This was the best I could get. And that all came from the issue of identity. Um, I believed it. That was who I was. That was what my life was like. So as soon as that withdrawal starts kicking in, even though she told me I'd have to learn how to walk again, it's like, you take a drug away from an addict, they start figuring some things out. And what I did was I grabbed a walker that they had sitting beside my bed, and I physically, from my upper body, I drug myself down the hall of the hospital and checked out against medical advice. I had a guy come pick me up. He took me to my house because I knew I had something there that would make me feel better. And the next 4 months was, I mean, like, I got a broke neck. I'm in a neck brace. I got an eye patch on because I can't even close this eye. Spine's mangled. Like, I can't hardly move around. I had to get a friend of mine put me in the shower and shower me. I mean, it was ugly. And at this point, like, I'm selling drugs again, and I'm pretty much trading or selling everything that I have, every possession I have, my truck, my couch, my TVs, like whatever that had value, possession wise, to maintain that lifestyle I was going. And my intentions was I was going to kill myself when I ran out. And early October of 2020, I got a call from my son's mom saying he wanted to see me. So, like, before, like, he hadn't seen me since before the relapse, pretty much. I mean, it's been like 10 months since I seen him. And I look like I do now, give or take, facial movement. And I, I'm 270 right now, but I was 210 pounds. I had opioid green skin. My eyes were yellow, jaundiced looking, eye patch, neck brace. I could barely get around, walk with a cane. And I traded my truck away, so I got a buddy of mine to drive me up to the park to meet him. And I was standing there in the parking lot, just kind of watching him play from a distance. And I remember thinking, like, he ain't gonna know who I am. He's not gonna recognize me. And by the time that thought crossed through my mind, he looks at me and he just comes running up with a big smile, and he's like, "Daddy." Oh man. He goes, "Did you almost die?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "If you die, I want to bury you outside of my bedroom window so you always be there." Rock bottom is different for a lot of people, but it's like homelessness, eating out of trash cans, getting shot at, stabbed, cut, slashed, all that stuff. The lifestyle I was living, the rest, like, none of that stuff was enough in itself to make me make me change. But like when my son said that to me, it was like I felt every bit of pain that I had ever felt in my life in one moment. I think it kind of broke me enough to let some light shine in.
Mm.
And it's how, like looking back at this, when my son looked at me, he didn't see all the things I was.
Mm.
I was living up to the lie. He didn't see the addict, the junkie, the deadbeat, the criminal, all that stuff. Like he looked at me and he saw his daddy. And I realized that, that's when Jesus looks at me. He
Mm.
doesn't see all those things. He sees his child and he just wants me to come home. And it's like it takes he was 6 at the time. It takes a 6-year old to teach a grown man a lesson like that. And when I got home from that, I got myself down on my knees, and I remember the prayer I made. It was the first prayer I prayed in a long time. And I said, God, fix me or just take me home. Like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Mm.
And I went back down, and I probably passed out off of something I was doing. And as soon as my eyes open the next day, my phone rings. And like, I've never heard of this happening before, but the guy on the other end of the phone said, do you or anyone you know have a problem with drugs and alcohol? And I said, I got a problem. And he said, do you want help? And I'm like, please help me. And he said, well, give me your information. I said, I ain't got insurance. I lost my job back in January. He said, well, just give me your information and let me see if anything comes up. So I told him my information. He runs it. And he's like, I got a policy for you that's good through the end of the year. That job that let me go, it kept paying my insurance just in case. And
Wow.
he's like, do you want to go to Florida or California? And I was like, no, I've been to treatment 11 times. I said, I've given Florida a try already. California is further away from North Carolina anyway. I think I'll go there. So I missed the
Wow.
plane twice. Just like, just because I had to have one more. And I kept missing the plane. I remember I called him. He's like, I'm going to do this one more time. He said, if you're not on that plane, don't call me again. And I made it the third time, and I took a shot of methamphetamine in the RDU airport bathroom and got on that plane. And the weird thing was, like, this is one of them things that the enemy walks around like a roaring lion.
Mm-hmm.
Last shot I took felt just like the first one I took. Like it was. I'm gonna say the word good, but I don't mean good. It was that intense. It hit me that hard, and I was like, man. Yeah, but I still got on that plane. Fly out to California. I ended up at this. It was a treatment center, but it was just a house. It was 6-person capacity. Um, the people that owned it were the people that ran it, and they had a firm grasp of recovery. They, the guy that owned it had 25 years at the time. He had it figured out, and remember he became my sponsor while I was there. I was going to these AA meetings and all this stuff, and I stayed there 91 days, and God's like putting people in my life, like that guy, and then there was this tech named Melissa that really took a liking to me. Her and her husband, JD, like both of those guys, both of them just. JD don't like nobody, but for some reason he had a soft spot for me. I mean, he used to call me hillbilly, and they couldn't hardly understand anything I said. So I shared
They
a
want you
meeting.
to talk all the time.
He was like, "What did you just say?"
Say it again. Say it again.
He's like, "Do you speak English?" I'm like, "I speak English. I don't know what y'all are speaking." But so I get out of that place after 91 days, and I took a job at a lumber mill, and I went to this sober house. I put
Out
the
there
quotations up.
still.
Yeah, I'm still in California. I put the quotations up because I was the only person there that was sober. And about a week in, Melissa, the tech at the treatment center, she calls me and she's like, "How are you doing?" And I said, "I don't think I'm going to make it here." And like, with, without hesitation, she's like, "Pack your bags. I'm coming to get you." And her and JD let me stay with them for 3 months. They wouldn't let me stay. Like they cried when I left California, but they let me stay with them while I saved up money. Yeah, I was able to go buy a car, and then I got offered a position working in the oil field in North Dakota. And man, they cried. And when I left, like JD was he's a war vet, just like a hard dude, and he cried, he cried when I left.
Oh.
And I mean, these people are like I still talk to these people today. Like they're still important to me. Like they did like they showed up when I didn't deserve it. They taught me what grace was on a human level because I still again I believed in God. And I had this experience like when I was in treatment. They brought this witch in. She was a shaman, which
Uh,
is pretty much a Native American medicine man, but this was a white lady. Like she comes in with all these rattles and she's burning sage and all this stuff, and she's like, we're gonna do a vision quest, and I'm still kind of new. Like there was all kinds of weird stuff going on. For a bit, like they bring this old woman in that they called her the Angel Lady, and she would do angel cards. And like I wouldn't participate in that. So I'm like, where's that in the Bible? Like, where are them angel numbers at? Like, what can you give me a chapter and verse for that? But when that shaman lady comes in, it's like, for some reason I say yeah, and all of us laid down on the floor, and she's like put rags over our face we couldn't see, and she's playing these Native American drum beats on the speaker and like walking around sage and everything, and like I could feel her over top of me with her hands, like not touching me, but like I could feel her over top of me, and the it worked, man. Like I ain't saying witchcraft ain't real. I'm just saying it ain't of God. So I come out of this trance, and she's so like beforehand, like she's like, hey, all communicative and wanting to talk and all close to me and stuff. And then like after that, like she's keeping her distance, like she's staying far away from me. And like I see her, like she went to everybody in the room, like, what'd you see? This is what I saw. And then she finally like pulls me over in the corner and it's like all secretive about it. She's like, you want me to tell you what I saw? And I was like, yeah. I mean, you told everybody else. And she goes, I saw more angels around you protecting you than I've ever seen in all the years I've been doing this. And she said, did you see anything? I said, yeah. And she goes, do you mind telling me? And I'll just kind of tell it to you like I told it to her. I was like, yeah, I was on the beach, like on the ocean front with my dog, the one that saved my life or helped save my life. And I said, I saw this man. Like I hadn't read Revelation yet at the time. Like, my parents forced me to go or my mom forced me to go to church. And side note, like I'm not one of these people. This might not be politically correct. I'm not one of these people that think that kids should get a decision in going to church and figure it out on their own. I think parents should force their kids to go to church because when I came down to nothing, the only place I had to turn was Jesus. And it was
Amen.
because of that foundation that I had. We look at all these other religions and they say Jesus is a way. Like they talk about Jesus in Islam, they talk about Jesus in Buddhist beliefs and all these religions. But Jesus says, I am the way. So if we're just doing a vote, Like he gets a vote from every other religion, but he only gives himself a vote in the religion. So, I think don't let your kids choose whether or not you take them to church. Uh, but I hadn't read Revelation at the time, and I'm in this vision. I'm standing on the shore, looking out across the ocean, and this man's riding a white horse towards me on top of the water. He's got a white robe, blood stains on it. He's got a blood red sash on. He's
Wow.
got a sword, King of Kings, Lord of Lords on his thighs, a crown. He's a king, and he comes up to me and he says, "You know who I am, and you know where I come from. Follow me." And like I don't tell this story often because people are people are people. But he tells me that, and I take off. Like he turns off and starts riding away, and like me and my dog was just like, we're
Yeah.
keeping up with him
Run,
running
man.
across the board. Yeah, and yeah, it's odd, man, because like when I start reading the Bible, I started it in John, and there's a part in John, I think it's in John chapter 9, where Jesus is arguing with the Pharisees like he likes to do. And they're like, "We don't even know where you're from. We don't even know who you are. We don't know where you come from." And Jesus's response to them is, "You know who I am, and you know where I come from." And when I saw that, I was like, "Yeah, that was the first time I spoke about that publicly." But I was in a Bible study, and I stopped the Bible study. I was like, "I got to tell you something." Like Jesus encountered me in witchcraft. But anyway, I'll get back.
Oh, that gives all new meaning to Romans 8:28.
Right.
He will work all things for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose.
Yep.
Woo.
Um, Anyway, so I go up to North Dakota, and I know I'm like jumping around here, but
I love it,
I
man.
leave California. JD's just in all kinds of tears and feelings and emotions, and I drive up to North Dakota, and like I don't know anybody. Like I'm not going to sell somebody the lie that just because you get sober that life gets good. Like it still hurts. It's still painful. It still hits really hard. But if you have Jesus in your corner, like he will go through all of that with you. He will take them beatings with you. He will stand with you. He will
Amen.
fight with you, and you don't have to go through any of these things alone. But I get to North Dakota, and I mean, I'm miserable. All there is to do is work, and then there's a ton of bars in Watford City, and there's one church and a gym, and I start going to this gym like every day. I worked a lot of hours, and I'm going to this gym because that was part of the identity thing too, man. It was like I was either Joe the weightlifter or Joe the fighter, or Joe the drug addict. It was all these things that I was trying to seek validation through and become, and none of it was me. I mean, I still go to the gym, but it's not like like there was a time if I didn't go to the gym, like I'd be upset, like I'd be mad, and I'd go to this gym, but that pastor from that church, like he was always in there when I would go in there. Like I think that he would just sit in there and wait for me to come in before he would leave. But every day he'd come up to me and he'd say, "Joe, I love you and Jesus loves you, and I've been praying for you." And like I'd go in there and I'd see him and I'd try to hide from him. I'd be like, just leave me alone. I don't want to talk about that. But every day, "Joe, I love you. Jesus loves you. I've been praying for you." And, over the course of time, like he was probably 70, 80 years old at that time. Yeah, I still talk to him today too. But he I didn't realize what he was doing at the time, but I do now. He was loving the literal hell out of me. not doing that, he was loving God into me. And, over the course of time, conversations got longer. We became friends. And, there was a time God spoke to me and he said, "You left a lot to live up to and a lot to live down. You need to go home and make it right." And, Isaiah 6:8, I was like, well, what can God do with my yes? Isaiah 6:8 says, the Lord said, "Whom shall I send and who will go for us?" And Isaiah said, "Here am I, send me." And, God makes him like the greatest prophet. And just because he gave him a yes. And it's like, what can God do with my yes? So, I packed my car up and start driving to North Carolina. I called my job and I'm like, I ain't coming back. I'm going back home and I got nowhere to go. I got nowhere to live. I got no job. And I mean, as soon as I cross the North Carolina state line, my phone rings. And this guy I used to get high with, he's like, he had become like super Christian. He's a deacon in the church. His kids are homeschooled, like they read the Bible every day. But he's like, "How you been doing?" And I said, "Well, I just got back into North Carolina." He said, "Well, where are you staying at?" And I said, "I'm staying in my car, I guess. I ain't got nowhere to go." And he said, "Well, I got an extra room if you want to live with us. It's like, $300 a month. How does that sound?" And I said, "All right." So, I go there and I hear laughter. Like I hear people that love each other, humility, gratitude, these things that I'm so foreign to. And, like the kids are saying yes, sir, and yes, ma'am. And like he's playing with his kids and being a great dad. And, the mom's being a great mom. And all these I love yous and all these I'm proud of yous. And I'm just like, man, if I could rebuild my life, this, these people ain't rich, but like this is rich. Like this is a currency that I don't know anything about, and I want that. And between all the things that all the people God put in my life, and then he brought me home and set me there. Like I see it was for a reason. And I tried to do some things, and I was like, I want to help people. So I started this company called Takeover, and it was like Joe centered, and it was just so much drama and so much chaos. And it was like this little TikTok clique. It was terrible, and I was just miserable. Like I was not having fun. I was like, this ain't it. And guys like, nah, it ain't it. So then, like, I was like, okay, I'm gonna start this nonprofit, and started this nonprofit called Live Your Freedom, and it was still Joe centered, but it had a little bit of Jesus sprinkled on it. And it was the same thing, man. It just got stagnant. There was nothing coming. There was like, God's trying to pour into me, and I'm standing in the way. I'm just a clog in the pipe, and He can't pour anything into me because I got the plumbing clogged up. So about a little over a year ago, He starts pushing me more into ministry, and I start this Facebook group, and it's like, okay, like we'll call it Warpath Ministries, and we started. I think like the first couple weeks we had like 300, 250, 300 members, and I start making these videos where I'm not the focal point of it, because I was like, I didn't do none of this. Like there's a savior out here that just wrecked my life, and in the best way possible, and he's brought me so much, and like I want to tell people about him. I start doing Bible studies and kind of putting them on. I say, I'm getting in the Word, like, and it's crazy, man, because like at some point when I was a kid, getting forced to go to church, like God had hidden these scriptures in my heart. He had hidden these stories in my heart, and then I start back reading, and I'm like, man, I'm just understanding it. Like God is, the Spirit is just like advocating. He's interpreting things. He's giving me an understanding far more than what I'm capable of on my own. And it's like, man, this is the greatest story I've ever read. Like, I want to know more about this Jesus. And like, I'm so green, at this time in Bible knowledge. Like, I'm just like trying to absorb everything I can, and it's like he's just letting me learn it. Like, he's giving me so much like divine wisdom on what scriptures mean, um, helping me retain these things, and he's giving me this ability to teach it on a level that people can understand. Like, I'm a real simple person. Like, there's not a lot of complexities about me. So like when I communicate a story or communicate, verse, chapter, Bible things, so I don't realize what I'm doing, but I get I get all these messages of like, man, I never understood that, like the way you explained it, like I finally understand, and I'm like, I don't even want to be like thank you because it ain't me. It
Right.
ain't me doing
Right.
that.
I understand.
Thank you on his behalf, I guess. But it's like all this stuff starting to click, and we started with 250, 300 members at the time. Over the course of the first year, it jumped up to almost 50,000 members in that group. And we pulled the paperwork last January, and we started doing events and traveling around and sharing the gospel. And, I always go like to John 9:25. In that chapter, Jesus has healed this man that was born blind, and the Pharisees are basically interrogating this guy. It's like, who did this? Is he a sinner? We know he's a sinner. He's he's curing people. He's working on the Sabbath. He's casting out demons by the power of demons. It's like they're just like trying to trap this guy into saying something so they can kick him out of the synagogue. And they ask him. John 9:24 is like, who is this man? Is he a sinner? Or we know he's a sinner. In John 9:25, the blind man responds, I don't know if he's a sinner or not. I don't know this man. All I know is that I was blind and now I can see. And that right there is short and to the point as it is a full blown testimony. Like, you don't have to know the entire book to have a relationship with the author.
Amen.
You have to do is tell somebody about your experience with Christ. I mean, that's why it's the living word. Like, this book here is a collection of testimonies.
Yes.
These people giving their experience and you know, their example of an encounter with Christ. And the reason it's a living word is because it doesn't end at the end of it. Like, we
Yes.
still do that. We still have these experiences. We still have these encounters with Christ. And, just telling somebody, this is what happened. Like, I was blind. Then Jesus showed up and now I can see.
Yeah.
Like that's the testimony, man. And that's why this word never dies. Like, it goes from, we got to do these animal blood, sacrifices. And the reason they don't work is because the source of the blood dies. So the blood dies. We have a living God. Like, you check the tomb, he's not there.
Yeah.
We have a living source of blood that covers us. Our sacrifice never expires. Like, he did something on that cross that is so amazing. And like, people were so cliche with the cross. Especially in the Christian community, they're like, "Oh, leave it at the cross. Come to the cross," and they forget what the cross is.
Yes.
It's a torture device.
Yep.
It's meant to maim, kill, destroy. It's a symbol of suffering and shame, but because of what Christ did on it, it's now a symbol of hope and freedom.
Yes.
If he can do that with the cross, then he can do that with me. Like he can change my life from this symbol of darkness and chaos and turn me into a symbol of peace and hope for somebody else. And he can do the same. Like if he can do it with me, he can do it with anybody. But
Amen.
and it's that name thing. He gives Peter a new name. He gives Paul. He changes his name from Saul to Paul. He's changed my name too. He's given me the identity that I looked for so long, and things that couldn't validate me. And like we look around the world, and it's the world is so sick because generally and on a very widespread level, people can't accept the truth as the truth. Like we got people that don't know what bathroom to use. They don't know what gender they are. They don't even know what sex they are, and they try to go out here and change it. And we see the suicidality, the rates of people killing themselves, and as much as they want to blame it on, oh well, my family don't accept me and all this stuff. Like I'm gonna make a comparison here. Like you can't tell me that the alphabet community is bullied any more than the African American community was pre civil rights.
Yes.
The suicide rates in the African American community were just like the ones in our community.
Yeah.
But the suicide rates in the alphabet community are like 50%. Like, if you don't know who you are, you're wondering why you want out of this life. And it's all an identity crisis. Like, that's what we have. And the more I read the word, the more I realize that the word is a manual. It's a playbook for figuring out who you are via learning who Christ is. Is he who he says he is? And that's the biggest question we're ever going to come to terms with. It's bigger than any question you're ever going to ask yourself. Is who is Jesus Christ? If he is who he says he is, then I also am who he says I am, because he is the truth, and what he says is the truth.
Yes. It's no wonder that Satan uses identity crisis to break so many people in so many ways, because that was exactly where his sin started that him kicked out of heaven in the first place, was his identity crisis, thinking that he was equivalent to God. Everything has been an identity crisis since day one, and he gets Eve in the garden.
And that's where I was about to go with it. Is Genesis 1,
Yeah.
God makes us in his likeness. he,
Yeah.
he makes us like God. And then Genesis 3, the snake comes in the garden. He's like, hey, if you eat this fruit, you'll be like God. So he's trying to convince you that you don't have something that God already said you did.
That right
And
there.
he's playing into that. Like he's telling you you're something that you're not. That you know God's a liar. And I read all these things. A lot of people will say that Satan was the angel of worship, and he's music and all this other stuff. But what is he? He's the accuser. Like
Uh-huh.
he is the lie, the father of lies. And from what I can gather from it, like Satan's not. He wasn't an angel of worship. He was the district attorney. He was the prosecutor in the heavenly courts. Like his job is to accuse you and find you guilty of your sin in front of God. And Jesus Christ is the defense attorney. Like he's the one that came in and got us off the hook. It's like what Christ did on the cross is God is 100% merciful, and he's 100% just. But
Mm-hmm.
those two things are in conflict with each other.
Yes.
It's like if I get arrested for armed robbery, and I'm standing before the judge, and he's like, "Okay, Joe, you don't have any priors, but I'm going to sentence you to life imprisonment with no possibility of parole. Justice has been fulfilled at the maximum, but there's no mercy." On
Mm-hmm.
the other end, same scenario, I go in there and the judge says, "You know what? Don't worry about it. You can walk out of here. Ain't no big deal." Mercy is fulfilled at 100% capacity, but justice is at zero.
Yes.
Now, same scenario, I go in and the judge is like, "All right, well, I'm going to give you 20 years." And then all of a sudden, this guy comes out of the back and he says, "Your Honor, I understand this man's guilty and somebody has to pay the price, but I want to do his time for him." Then you have justice being fulfilled, mercy being fulfilled. That's what Christ did on the cross. He
Amen.
fulfilled justice in the law and mercy, and he gave us a pardon. And through that pardon, we've been reconciled with the Father. Like, we've become a new creation. That's one of the things that I have a problem with in a lot of the 12-step meetings is, people seem to forget that the 12 steps came right out of this book.
Amen.
And there's a background history. It started with even groups before the Oxford group that were all biblical, Christ-centered groups. Bill Wilson got a hold of it and formulated it that way. Bill Wilson talks about Christ in his story. Um, and in the forward to the first edition, it clearly says we're more than 100 men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless condition of the mind and body. But
Mm-hmm.
yet, the people got a hold of that and they don't want Jesus there. So, like, this isn't part of the program. Like, this is part of the people that came in the program. We want to remove Jesus from this program, tell you that you can worship a doorknob, tell you that make this group of drunks your God, and have them lead your life. And by the way, when you come in here, we want you to identify as something you used to be.
Mm-hmm.
Come
Yes.
in here and you got to say, "My name's Joe, I'm an addict. My name's Joe, I'm an alcoholic." Like, there's nothing in my life today that resembles an addict or an alcoholic. Like, why do I keep having to identify myself as something that I'm not? Like, that's where Satan sneaks into that room. You still got to be those things that Christ said you're free of. I really believe in the idea of being born again.
You were talking about sacrifices earlier. Sacrifices don't change identity. Jesus
Right.
changes identity. There's just oh my gosh, there's so much in everything that you have shared. It's so powerful, so true. We could do a whole series on identity crisis alone. Like, my wheels are spinning here. This
Let's
is
do it.
yeah, we're gonna have to come up with part two of this because we're just beginning to scratch the surface, man. Like,
Yeah. I mean,
oh man,
there's so much,
yeah,
and we like to label all these things that's going on, like depression, bipolar. What is it? Everybody that comes in the treatment center is what, borderline personality disorder.
yes.
It's like, oh, they don't even know who they are, and you're right. Like, it's a all identity crisis. The reason I don't know who I am is because I don't know who he is. He wrote the blueprint. He knows exactly who I'm supposed to be and who I am.
Amen. And I want to say this too about Satan being the accuser. When he's the accuser, he's the liar. And you can probably attest to this. I've been there myself. When we've encountered Jesus and he's changed us and we're walking different, that accuser comes back and he will beatbox noise in your head all the time about who you used to be and slap you with condemnation, coming and going both ways, like trying to condemn you and remind you of who you used to be. And we, where we lose our identity or we forget who we forget whose kid we are at this point, that we're a son of, or a daughter of the Most High God, because we've encountered Jesus and he's changed us. We listen to that noise long enough that we come into agreement with the enemy, and then he makes us forget who we are now, and until he starts trying to drag us back into who we used to be. And I watch so many people get caught right there in that gap of listening to him, coming into agreement with him. Maybe you're right, maybe I still am that person, or no, no, when you encountered Jesus Christ and he saved your soul, you are forever changed. You were born again. And sometimes you
Right.
got to remind the accuser of that.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of power in the name of Christ. There's
Amen.
a lot of power in prayer, man. I can say, I can attest to this, that if it wasn't for praying mama, I wouldn't be here today.
I know
It's,
the others would. Right. Their mama's got a direct dial line sometimes.
yeah, they got God on speed dial.
Uh-huh. Oh, I got one there myself. Yeah.
Well,
Oh,
so that scripture, the prayers of the righteous will avail much. It's like, the prayers of a righteous person, especially, they, it's kind of misunderstood today. The scripture says, Jesus says, if you pray for anything or ask for anything in my name, then it will be granted. But, the word name is the Greek is noma. And what that truly means is the character, the reputation, and the function of a person. So
mm-hmm.
yes, it's important to pray in his literal name, but if your prayers are in the character, the function, and in the reputation of Christ, then Satan can't touch those.
Yes. 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 Oh, that's so good. Joe, this has been phenomenal. I cannot thank you enough. You got to come back
I
on.
wish I could take credit for it.
You got to come back on. We got to dive in some more to this for sure.
Thank you for having me on again.
Well,
It's very humbling, and it's an honor to come on here and share about my experience with Christ, and hopefully bring somebody that meaningful encounter with the gospel. So I appreciate it.
love it.
That sounds good. You have a blessed
Awesome.
night.
You too, man. Thanks.
All right, bye.